So good afternoon, everyone. I would like to extend a very warm welcome on behalf of Respect Me to everyone who has joined us today for this last episode in our Changemaker series for this year on the subject of disability and bullying. We are so glad that you are here with us this afternoon, and we're really looking forward to our conversations with our presenters today. My name is Lisa Armstrong, Training and Development Manager for Respect Me, and I will be chairing today's third and final Changemaker conversation for 2023. I'm also joined by my colleague, Safia Rahman, Respect Me's Training Officer, Equalities and Inclusion, who has worked so hard today to make this event possible. I'm also going to introduce you later to Eva Drummond, who is one of Respect Me's Youth Action Group members. So we'll meet both of them later. Our Changemaker theme this year has been inclusion and diversity, to spotlight the connection between effective inclusion and diversity work and preventing bullying behaviour. In webinar 1, we heard from some of the key players doing important research and work across Scotland in relation to body image and appearance. And in webinar 2, we explored further how to put the calls to action we introduced in the first webinar into practice by being change ready. Today's webinar will highlight the ways in which prejudice and discrimination towards disability can manifest as bullying behaviour, and ways that we can bring about meaningful change for the safety and well-being of our children and young people across Scotland. So, as I mentioned earlier, we've got a jam-packed agenda for you today, and you'll see in the chat box appearing shortly our agenda that outlines our speakers and the flow of the session for the next 2 hours. We're going to be using the chat box to collect your questions as we move through the presentation, so please do add those questions into the chat box as you're listening to the presenters. Safia is going to be on hand to review the questions as they come in and pose them to our guest speakers after their presentations. So first, however, I'd like to introduce you to Claire Hunter from Red Harbour, who is our event manager and has been across the series. And she's going to guide us through some simple housekeeping notes and our very first 2 Slido questions of today's event. We're going to be using Slido as a way to interact with you as our audience, and I'll hand over to Claire now to talk us through this next section. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. Nice to meet you all. I'm Claire Hunter from Red Harbour. Just a few notes just before we kick off today. I just let you know that the session is recorded and all attendees have been muted and cameras disabled on entering. We ask that you ensure your name is displayed correctly with no abbreviations and as per your booking form to help us with the admission process. Respect Me would like to remind everyone that they operate a safe space in today's webinar. They kindly invite all attendees to be respectful towards our speakers and each other when using the chat box. Respect Me reserves the right to move anyone who is disrespectful. The chat box will give attendees the opportunity to message myself and Respect Me. If you have any technical issues, if you could direct them to myself, and we'll allow relevant practical questions to our speakers on how to prepare for and create change. We will ask as many relevant questions as we can from the most frequently asked in the time that we have allocated. MS Teams offers closed captioning should you require this. Once you have joined the event, you can access this by going to your settings, clicking on accessibility, turn on the toggle captions to select always show captions in my meetings. A survey link will be posted in the chat and a QR code will be available at the end of the event. We would really appreciate you completing this survey before you leave the session so we can pass on the findings to Respect Me's funding and managing partners. The responses also help them produce future sessions. Finally, if you have been affected by bullying, Respect Me understand that it can be triggering. Please feel free to leave the session and take a break if you need to. Organisations such as Parentline or Samaritans can offer support if required. For the audience participation today, we'll be using Slido to do quick polls with you in real time. You can launch your laptop or do this on a smartphone. So if you could have this ready, I'll just launch a couple of questions just now. So if you go into slido.com and you can either put in that number, or if you have your smartphone, you could scan the QR code with your camera to access it. Okay, excuse me, I'm going to launch the first question. Where in the country are you joining us from today, and in what job role capacity are you attending? If you could launch your results for that, please. Thank you. Still a few typing. Just give you a couple of more seconds and then I'm going to move on.
Looks like a competition between Glasgow and Edinburgh, as far as I can see, Claire. I can see Renfrewshire, Clackmannanshire. So welcome everybody from wherever you are joining us from this evening. See Lanarkshire and lots of different roles, which is fantastic. Great. You might be joining us as a parent and carer. I can see somebody has also put in parent and carer, so that's brilliant. Super, thank you.
Great, I'll launch the second question now. What challenges are there when it comes to addressing disability-related bullying? Prevention and response, please.
So for this question, what we were interested in is your own experiences in your work with children and young people that have disabilities, and maybe you're not working with children directly with disabilities, but you've also do have experience of disability related bullying. Either you've dealt with it or you've witnessed it. So it would be great to see what range of responses we can get for this question as well. Thank you. Yeah, so I can see somebody saying that they're worried about saying the wrong thing. And that's something that we hear a lot about when it comes to addressing prejudice and discrimination, is just worrying if we're going to get it right. And that can sometimes get in the way and be a barrier. So thanks for your honesty there. So yeah, lots of different responses. This is really useful information for us to see as an organisation. Thank you. So we'll just let those keep coming in just for a couple of seconds. Great. Okay, thank you, everybody. So I'm just going to share my screen with you again. Okay, so thank you, Claire, for taking us through the housekeeping notes, and I hope that you enjoyed using Slido. We'll be using it again later on at the end of the presentation. So I'd like to open, first of all, by highlighting the importance of Respect Me hosting this national conversation. We have set out to bring organisations and people together today to share how to create the changes that we need to protect the rights of disabled children and young people, who are some of the most vulnerable children in our society. Today, we will learn about ways that we can bring our collective action to bear to make the lives of Scotland's disabled children and young people as safe and as happy as possible, so they are free from bullying and are accepted, respected, included, and treated with dignity. And this is what our Changemaker series is all about, because experiencing bullying can really strip away at a child's sense of agency, their dignity and self-worth. And having a disability can add to the frustration, isolation, and the negative mental health impacts that we know bullying can have. So we want to encourage you all here today to see yourselves as change makers, working within your sphere of influence to take on board the ideas and inspiration that our partners here today are going to share with us, and to take the positive action. And it's been our privilege to have been able to bring together this episode with a fantastic lineup of key partners, as I said, doing great work to promote inclusion, diversity and equity for disabled children and young people across Scotland. So a very warm welcome to Salvesen Mindroom, Enable, I Am Me Scotland and Rebel Loop Studios. And I'm going to introduce each of our speakers individually shortly. We would also like to thank the support given to us by Dyslexia Scotland, Red Harbour and our partners at Scottish Government. So Jenny Gilruth, MSP and Cabinet Secretary for Education and Skills, was due to join us today. However, unfortunately, she has been unable to attend as she's been called out away on other parliamentary business. However, we were really pleased to receive her support for the Changemaker series, thanking us for highlighting the ways in which prejudice and discrimination towards disability and other characteristics can manifest as bullying behaviour. And you can see from her quote on the screen that she is encouraging all of us here today to bring about meaningful changes in the safety and well-being of children and young people across Scotland. So we thank Miss Gilruth for that support. We're also really delighted that BAFTA award-winning TV presenter, children's author, CBeebies star and Down syndrome ambassador George Webster has kindly sent support for our Changemaker series as well. So he's basically told us that everyone is different, everyone is unique. We need to see more people like me in the media and on screen, as we are people, we exist, and we have the same rights as everyone else. Bullying is wrong, and being included in mainstream school meant that I have friends from all different backgrounds, and that is how sustainable change will happen in future. We need to be seen and be part of everyone's lives. And I'm delighted to be supporting Respect Me's hashtag Team Changemaker. So big thanks to George for sending us that quote and supporting our Changemaker series. Okay, so without further ado, it's time now to introduce our first speaker for today, Rachel Matheson. Rachel is the training coordinator at the Salvesen Mindroom Centre, which supports children and young people with learning difficulties to lead a fulfilling life and helps their families to also support them to achieve this. She has a PGDE in primary education, an HNC in social care practice, and has worked across the public and third sector in senior social care roles. Rachel is neurodivergent and applies this lived experience to inform her approach when exploring and providing training around the topic of neurodiversity. So over to you, Rachel. Thank you.
So I had a very brief introduction about myself lined up, but you've done it for me beautifully, so thank you. I'll simply say that I'm Rachel and I'm originally from Aberdeen. I saw one Aberdeen come up on the screen earlier, so I feel very welcome. So I'm going to start then, rather than introducing myself, by quickly introducing the charity that I work for. So Salvesen Mindroom, as was kind of outlined there, works to provide support, advocacy and information to neurodivergent young people and their families. It was established in 2001 to do so. There's a kind of broad outline of the work we do on screen, and I think it's worth pointing out that we provide support across Scotland, and we will do so regardless of a child having a specific neurodivergent diagnosis. So that's a brief outline of the work that we do, but to move on to today's presentation, I thought it was probably good to start with what is neurodiversity. So I've put it up here as ND. Sometimes you'll see those two letters put down as a kind of abbreviated form of the word neurodiversity or neurodivergent. The quote on screen is by Dr. Nick Walker, and I think he encapsulates things quite nicely. Neurodiversity is a way of recognizing that no two brains work the same. We all perceive and engage with the world differently. So in this respect, collectively, we're all neurodiverse. Some people will have cognitive and communication profiles that differ more significantly and can be attributed to a specific known condition, such as autism, ADHD, or dyspraxia, for example. They would be considered neurodivergent because the way they perceive the world diverges from the majority of the population. It's estimated that around 15% of the population worldwide is neurodivergent, but if we consider that everyone thinks differently, there's really no justification for the level of discrimination often faced by individuals on this basis. And the neurodiversity model challenges this, focusing on inclusion, and rights regardless of difference. So when we talk about neurodiversity, we often talk about hidden disability. And there's a number of reasons why we use that term, but before we discuss them, I think it's important to make the following point. People don't always understand neurodivergent conditions as disabilities, including those who are neurodivergent themselves, dependent on the extent to which they feel their condition impacts them. However, under the Equalities Act, neurodivergent conditions often meet the legal definition of a disability as having a significant long-term impact on a person's ability to fulfill day-to-day tasks, and so legally, children and adults who come under this banner are protected. But in what way are these potential disabilities hidden? Well, firstly, there's often no physical characteristics. There's no external indicators attached to diagnosis, such as autism or intellectual disabilities, and the outward expression of the condition is often in behaviours that are driven by unseen neurological processes. This is further complicated by masking, which is the term we use to describe all the strategies applied by neurodivergent people to cover up those behaviours deemed less socially acceptable. Some people are really good at masking, and often the complex cognitive hoops that they're jumping through in everyday situations will go unnoticed for this reason. Many people are also undiagnosed. For example, diagnostic rates between males and females are extremely uneven. In autism, these sit at about 4-to-1 weighted towards males. Things are changing, but neurodivergence continues to be less recognised in certain groups, and this can limit diagnosis and support. And finally, a person may choose not to disclose, and if they're really good at masking, their condition will likely remain hidden. So we know that the less explicit nature of neurodivergent disability can make it harder to recognise, and that can increase the likelihood of discrimination and bullying. Another factor we have to consider is obviously the impact of prejudice. So firstly, there are lingering historical stereotypes. Beliefs continue to pervade around neurodivergent people being less academically and socially able. A recent study from the Institute of Leadership and Management found that 50% of managers would be reluctant to hire a person with a neurodivergent condition. If the adult world continues to act in such a prejudicial way, the example filtering down to children will be equally negative. Alongside these stereotypes come the assumptions many people justify from the perspective of personal preservation. For example, the parent who says they don't want an ADHD child in the class because they fear it's going to impact their own child's learning. These stereotypes and harmful assumptions filter down and they create stigma, which in turn limits people feeling able to be open about being neurodivergent for fear of reprisal. This lack of openness results in fewer positive examples of neurodivergent people in society, depriving us of the opportunity to understand the strengths and qualities inherent in neurodiversity. So we've looked at the kind of wider issues there that can lead to increased rates of bullying and discrimination, but what are the more tangible factors that you might see day to day? Well, firstly, neurodivergent children can be bullied for presenting in ways considered unusual, but which are out with their control. This can include tics, a key aspect of Tourette syndrome, or stimming behaviours such as repetitive hand movements that are part of how many neurodivergent people manage feelings of overwhelm. Some neurodivergent children may act in ways that are perceived as bullying without realising, resulting in retaliatory behaviour from peers, and the child themselves then becoming bullied. For example, children with ADHD may act in a pushy way towards others when experiencing impulsivity. Whilst this behaviour is challenging, it misses the threshold of bullying as defined by the Anti-Bullying Alliance of constituting the intentional hurting of another person. Here, the child is expressing an internal need without the realisation that they are upsetting others. These examples point to why neurodivergent children often struggle to build friendships, making them more vulnerable to bullying. Many neurodivergent children want to make friends and are devastated when this fails due to their cognitive or communication style being misunderstood by their peers. Many autistic people, for example, can also find it easier to communicate online, and cyberbullying can significantly impact their opportunities to build friendships in this way. Finally, we should be alert to coercion and exploitation. Neurodivergent young people are vulnerable in a number of ways. Autistic children may struggle to read social cues and not recognise when someone is lying to them. A situation frequently encountered by Salveson Mindroom staff are neurodivergent children perceiving mistreatment by others as friendship. A person with ADHD who's drawn to high-risk activity may be drawn into criminal behaviour without fully realising. And a recent study at the University of Salford demonstrated the high levels of suggestibility present in people with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, which can render them targets for manipulation and exploitation by others. Now, alongside this, we should also bear in mind that there are a myriad of microaggressions that many neurodivergent children will face. As we've discussed, they can be isolated. Peers may not be actively aggressive towards them, but the passive act of not engaging in friendship can be just as impactful. They may find their peers begin subtly mimicking them. For example, if they are dyslexic and maybe sound more disjointed when reading aloud, others may begin to mirror this as a joke. Whilst reasonable adjustments can be hugely helpful, they can also draw negative attention from classmates and further expose differences if badly implemented. As we've said, many neurodivergent people are aware of how their behaviour is perceived and will do everything they can to avoid drawing attention to this. Actions that attempt to provoke them into unmasking can be extremely upsetting. For example, a peer who keeps making loud noises to provoke a noise-sensitive autistic pupil into meltdown. There's also constantly commenting on a child's perceived flaws. Children with ADHD receive, on average, 20,000 more negative comments from adults than their peers, which will obviously have a significant long-term impact. These negative comments encourage further masking, forcing the child to act in a way that's often uncomfortable and exhausting to present as neurotypical. For many neurodivergent people, long-term masking causes burnout and breakdowns. So, what is the impact of all this? Firstly, trauma. We know that significant instances of bullying can cause big T trauma, but the small, repeated actions of ostracisation by peers and the focus on negative behaviours by adults can generate small T trauma, affecting self-esteem, confidence, and mental health. The depression and low self-esteem drastically increase instances of anxiety-related school absence, whilst misinterpreting behaviour as bullying can lead to increased rates of exclusion. Current statistics show that children with additional support needs are 5 times more likely to be excluded than their neurotypical peers. Staff within our organisation also note the ripple effect of this exclusion on families, who often then become stigmatised within their communities. Being ignored by peers or struggling to attend school increases social isolation, which, as we've mentioned, increases loneliness and vulnerability. And that increased vulnerability impacts neurodivergent children becoming the victims of coercion or manipulation, ending up in risky situations or involved with criminal justice. Now, the impact of all this isn't just in childhood. A 2019 study exploring vulnerability in autistic adults found the following. When asked about childhood experiences, 85% of autistic participants said other children had left them out, and 77% said other children spread rumours or spoke behind their back. In comparison, around only 45% of neurotypical participants answered yes to those same questions. The study also showed this didn't improve in adulthood. 77% of autistic adults stated they'd been bullied by someone they considered a friend, and 48% said they'd been pressured into handing over money or possessions, more than double the instance of each situation reported by neurotypical participants. So, it maybe feels a bit like we've just been layering bad upon bad for the last sort of 10 minutes, and I think it's important to end with a step in a more positive direction. How can we affect change? So I've got 5 sort of ideas here. Starting with empathy, this is a learned skill, and we need to help young people expand their capacity in this area. Rather than jumping to assumptions about unusual behaviour, we want them to think about what it might communicate and be more compassionate towards this. In terms of education, we're thinking greater learning and open discussion in classrooms to build understanding around what neurodiversity looks like and what it means. That every brain is different. We all have a unique way of engaging with the world, and that's okay. Key to this is promoting that all diversity is okay, rather than singling out specific pupils as the ones who are different. I've put down clarity. The spectrum of good and bad behaviour is broad, and even adults can struggle to navigate it. Neurodivergent young people who struggle to read social cues will find this even trickier. Creating as clear an outline as possible about what constitutes acceptable behaviour and when something is moving the other way is important for everyone. Some neurodivergent young people may struggle to recontextualise learning outside the classroom, so discussing that these rules apply in the wider community and online is key to help vulnerable pupils stay safe. Being strengths-based, yes, it's important to recognise differences and to consider the support needs of neurodivergent children, but strengths are just as powerful for tackling bullying. Building positive self-regard is a great tool for challenging negative stigma from others. And finally, role modelling. This is aimed at us as adults. Are we as open-minded, well-informed and supportive as we can be? We can't expect children to engage positively around neurodiversity if we don't exemplify that same behaviour ourselves. Training and input will support adults to think more broadly about neurodiversity and model what they want to see in their children going forward. And this last slide here just outlines some tools available through Salveson Mindroom, linked to both the charity and also our research centre at the University of Edinburgh that might help with taking those actions forward. Our It Takes All Kinds of Mind booklet gives an outline of 5 different neurodivergent conditions based around case studies with young people who used our service. You can also find out more about our training, including our Neuro Inclusion at Work package. Our university website provides links to our LEANS programme, which is a package that can be used in school settings to discuss neurodiversity and inclusion. They also have some really excellent, concise and accessible research studies there as well. And that's me, hopefully within time.
Thank you so much, Rachel. You were absolutely on time. And I just want to say a big thanks for that really, really clear and succinct messaging in your presentation. I loved the 5 key ideas that you left us with, and that message that empathy can be learned and developed, and our role as adults to support children and young people to do that. And I think you had some really important messages as well about being able to recognise the unique ways that neurodivergent children and young people are impacted by bullying and some of the unique behaviours that they might be experiencing as well. I think it's very, very important that we're all able to recognise when bullying is actually happening, and that's often, you know, very much the first step in being able to support and address bullying. So thank you for that. It's absolutely fantastic presentation, and I'm sure everybody will really enjoy exploring the research and the amazing resources that your organisation has through the website. So thank you, Rachel. So I'm going to just open the chat box up now to all of you that are on the call this evening. If you have a question for Rachel, we would love you to pop it into the chat box for us, and Safia is going to be on hand to take those questions. So I'm just going to give you a couple of moments to pop those questions into the chat box, and then we can read some of them out.
Okay, I'm just having a quick look at the chat box, Lisa. There's currently no questions. I'll give everyone another minute or so. And in the meantime, I think I'll start with this question that we have received outside of the chat box, which is, so Rachel, we've heard beautifully about your top tips for change. Building on that, can you share with us what tips you can give our delegates today on how to overcome barriers when working towards change in order to prevent disability-related bullying?
So I think when we're thinking about barriers, I suppose they can be quite wide-ranging and will depend on people's circumstances. But the things that probably jump out for me are those prejudices and stereotypes that still linger. I think those are going to be a continued barrier to change. And they're kind of fed by that maybe limited understanding sometimes people have around disabilities that can kind of generate that othering and victimisation. And also, I think the limited resources people feel that they have is often part of that issue, particularly if you're in education or social care, and you maybe feel like you have to be all things to all people. So thinking about those barriers of kind of stereotypes and prejudice, and also those lack of resources. I think something that always jumps out for me is recognising, as I said, that we all have needs that we express in different ways, and kind of being aware of that, and encouraging people to better accommodate each other. And one way of doing that, I think, is to make adjustments general where possible. And this can often kind of overcome the negative suggestion of special treatment that leads to stigma and bullying. And actually, those kind of general adjustments tend to benefit everyone. So if we're thinking about a workplace example, for example, a flexible home working policy means an autistic employee who struggles in an office environment can choose to work from home without having to raise a fuss, as can the single parent who needs to be at home on a Friday when their kids finish school at lunchtime. So everybody benefits from that. We all need accommodations, and othering disabled people by suggesting they are the only ones who do helps no one. And I think that kind of goes in the classroom as well. There's some lovely work around universal design for learning. It's a kind of scientifically researched approach to creating learning environments that are fully accessible to all pupils regardless of need. So it kind of creates this environment where you're not necessarily having to make specific adjustments just for one person. You're thinking about the fact that we all have needs and how do we all accommodate each other. I think also it's important to remember that you're not alone in this. A huge barrier can be that kind of exhaustion of feeling like it's not possible to tackle such an embedded issue. We often talk about chunking when we come to kind of information processing for neurodivergent young people who perhaps can't take big chunks of information or large tasks all at once. So breaking it down into smaller steps and going one thing at a time until you achieve your goal. And I think that chunking metaphor kind of works for this as well. Small steps shared around a supportive team can gradually build into a big change. Engaging in discussion with those in your organisation and beyond, thinking about the wider community, finding out about local services or organisations more broadly that can provide resources and input so you're not having to do everything yourself, I think can help people to feel more empowered, more supported, and just kind of taking things a step at a time to get towards that bigger change.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Rachel. And I really loved that, that meant, the idea of chunking, and working together collaboratively to overcome those barriers and create change. Thank you so much for sharing those top tips and ways that we can all work to overcome barriers. There is another question that has popped into the chat box. I'm going to take it just very briefly. I'm just conscious of time, but perhaps you could answer, Rachel. It's how do you sensitively educate others when neurodivergent children, young people are present, thinking about their feelings and not feeling targeted?
Yeah, I think that's that could be quite a tricky one. I think that the Leans package that I mentioned earlier is a kind of a package that's been used in schools quite successfully, that we've worked with to kind of look at that broad spectrum of the fact that we all work differently, that we all have different kind of ways of thinking. And again, it kind of creates that general picture rather than focusing on specific diagnosis or specific kind of characteristics, I suppose. A diagnosis of any neurodivergent condition is a clinical diagnosis. So that's personal and confidential to a young person. So whether they choose to kind of share that is entirely up to them. So you're right, whether or not other people in the classroom are aware that this young person is autistic, has ADHD, etc., or not, you have to think really carefully about not drawing stigmatizing attention to somebody or othering them. So I think that kind of broader discussion about how we create learning environments where everybody can kind of go at things in their own way, which I think in theory is a lovely idea. How you get it in practice is more difficult, absolutely. Universal design for learning, and that kind of Leans package do give some practical tips around that.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Rachel. And Mrs. Clark, I hope you'll find that Leans resource really useful. So that brings us to the end of our session with Rachel. Thanks so much. And back to Lisa.
Great, thank you, Rachel. And I really would encourage everybody, if you've not come across the Leans programme, to check it out on the Salveson Mind Room website. It's completely free. And as Rachel said, it's got some fantastic kind of approaches and ways of creating that sensitive environment, and a really handy self-assessment checklist that people can go through to determine whether your children or young people setting is kind of ready, change ready, I guess, to embark on this work. So yeah, thank you, Rachel. Amazing presentation. And over to the next our next speaker this afternoon. Vari O'Rourke is the Project Development Coordinator at IME Scotland. She's currently studying for a degree in Integrated Health and Social Care at UWS. and most of her career has been spent working in adult support services across local authorities and the private sector, where too often she heard stories about how some people in our communities are treated by others. She is passionate about IME's work to empower people to make changes to attitudes and behaviours from primary school age up using IME's primary school programme. So over to you, Vari, and can't wait to hear your presentation.
So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Vari O'Rourke and I work for a charity called I Am Me Scotland. So today I'll be talking about disability, bullying and hate crime prevention. So as you know, we're here to talk about disability and bullying, and I think it's important to say that the disabled population is the world's largest minority of which anyone can become a part of at any time. So to start off, I'm going to play a short poem written by a friend of the charity, Rory.
Imagine a world free from prejudice and hate. We can only dream, but wouldn't that be great? Imagine being able to go wherever you like without being subjected to abuse or a fight. Imagine being celebrated no matter your size or your shape in societies worldwide accepting every religion and race. Imagine being told that you had what it took instead of, nah, sorry, you don't have the right look. Imagine feeling safe wherever you are, no matter where you come from or if your face has a scar. Imagine a world where beauty standards don't make us feel insecure and where prejudice is something that no one has to endure. Imagine a world where people are welcomed and included and where nobody is ever mocked or excluded. Imagine a world free from prejudice and hate. We can only dream, but wouldn't that be great?
So I think we can all agree that that's where we want to be. We want to be in a world where everyone is accepted and feels comfortable and confident. So I'll tell you a little bit about the charity I Am Me Scotland. So we're an award-winning charity that works in partnership with Police Scotland to raise awareness of and tackle disability hate crime. So the charity was started by the founder, Carol, who watched a documentary called Don't Hate Us. It was about a girl called Gemma Hayter, who had a learning disability and had just started to become a little bit more independent. So Gemma had her own house and had made a new group of friends, which she hadn't made through a disability group. So it was the first group of friends that she'd made on her own. And Gemma's family had basically tried to tell her that they didn't think that this group's intentions were great. But Gemma was determined she wanted to keep those friends. So Gemma had her friends over. They started using her flat to take drugs. They started to take her money. And they went out one night to the pub and Gemma joked with one of the bouncers that one of the girls wasn't of age to get into the pub. The group then went to a house party and they were really angry with Gemma, treated her really badly, beat her up, made her drink urine, and she begged to go home. So they said that they were taking her home and there's CCTV footage of Gemma following the crowd up the road, and what they did was they took her to a railway embankment and they left Gemma to die. So Carol at that point had never heard about disability hate crime, and she was delivering a presentation on hate crime to housing officers here in Renfrewshire along with Police Scotland. So she went to her partner in Police Scotland and said, does this happen? I've never heard of disability hate crime before. So they went to disability groups locally and spoke to their disabled community, and it became very clear that disabled people were being asked to change their behaviours. So don't go on the bus at that time, don't walk past the school at that time, instead of trying to educate communities about people being different. So I Am Me Scotland have two key initiatives. So we have our Keep Safe initiative, which is basically a network of safe spaces throughout Scotland where people can go if they ever feel lost, scared or vulnerable. Keep Safe was initially for our disabled community. However, we can all feel lost or scared or vulnerable when we're out in the community. So Keep Safe's actually for everyone. Anywhere can become a Keep Safe place. They are identified by the IME sticker in the window, and the staff are trained on how to help people if they need help. Our other initiative is I Am Me, and that's our educational resources, so focuses on early intervention and prevention. So I'll talk a bit about that in a minute, but what I want to do is just show you a short clip of what we do.
Where have you been tonight, Charlie? You've been out pulling all the birds.
Brian!
You patching me, Charlie?
Okay, just need to get home.
Okay, just need to get home back to the flat.
Stop it, you're upsetting him.
There are 1 million people in Scotland registered as disabled or with a long-term illness,
with 90% of people with a learning disability having experienced bullying and harassment.
It is estimated that there are around 62,000 disability hate crimes on average each year, with 97% of those going unreported.
We started the IME charity to raise awareness of disability hate crime. We work in partnership with Police Scotland, disabled people, young people and the wider community. This is some of our work.
So that's just a short explanation of what we do as a charity. And as the video advised, our main aim is to raise awareness of and tackle disability hate crime. So what I've done here is put an explanation of what bullying is, which is both behaviour and impact. So when someone does, and the impact has on the other person's capacity to feel in control of themselves. And hate crime is any crime which is perceived by the victim or any other person as being motivated by malice or ill will towards a social group. So young people and sometimes adults with disabilities will often talk about being bullied. And sometimes when you talk to them about being bullied, that may involve maybe a physical assault or verbal abuse. So sometimes that can be known as hate crime. So there is definitely a thin grey line between the two. However, what we don't want to do as a charity, we don't want to criminalise young people. So it's important that schools take the lead and we ensure that young people who are being targeted also feel that their concerns are being taken seriously. So we want to educate people, we want to empower people. So as we said, around 1 million people in Scotland define themselves as disabled. And as Rachel commented earlier, we're all different. So disability can mean many things, from physical disabilities, learning disabilities, mental health conditions, as well as conditions like cancer, visual impairments, and many, many more. So the charity wants to talk to young people and adults and educate them on different disabilities and inclusion. So before COVID, we were going into primary schools and we were delivering workshops to 10,000 children on our #MakeADifference programme. So that was from nursery all the way up to primary 7, talking about inclusion, bullying, and as we got into primary 6 and 7, we would talk about hate crime, the use of language, and actions that have on other people. So we surveyed around 3,000 children a year, and 50% of those children reported that they had experienced bullying. So during COVID, we couldn't go in and deliver our workshops anymore, and we felt it was very important to still get that message out there so that people have an understanding of different disabilities. So we created our online learning platform. This has a range of lessons, animations and videos that basically talk about difference, about different disabilities, about bullying and hate crime. We also have resources on alcohol and substance awareness from nursery all the way up to S5, and lots of information about I Am Me and Keep Safe. So some behaviours and challenges that children were telling us they were experiencing was that other people don't understand their differences and conditions, and that's maybe why they're sometimes left out or not included, called names or made fun of. Whether they look different or learn different or behave a little differently to others, the same message was coming through. So the Make a Difference programme highlights that it's okay to look different than others, as well as it's being okay to that other people might act or learn differently than you. So our resources are there to give young people the information that they need to understand, not only different disabilities, but also how others feel. So it's important that we develop our resources from the ground up. We develop them with people who have lived and living experience, letting them tell their story and how others can help them. So for example, we worked with a group of children on a Down syndrome awareness, animation and video, and the young people were amazing at telling us what they were good at and what they found difficult and how others could help them. So I'm just going to show you a short clip about Chloe and her friends.
Hello, my name is Chloe and I am 8 years old. I would like to tell you all about Down syndrome. Down syndrome is something that some people are born with. Nobody knows what causes it. It just means we have a little extra something. Our body is made of lots of tiny cells. These cells are smaller than a tiny, tiny dot. So tiny you can't even see them without a microscope. Each cell has something called chromosomes, which contain information that decides how you look. From your eye colour, your hair, and even how tall you will be. Babies are born with 46 chromosomes, 23 from mum and 23 from dad. Some lucky babies have been gifted an extra chromosome. Yay! When this happens, it's called Down syndrome. Just like the colour of your eyes, you can't change it. It's not an illness, so no one else can catch it. It's just a small part of the wonderful things that make you unique. Each year, around 49,000 babies are born in Scotland, but only 70 of these babies are gifted the extra chromosome. I am one of those lucky babies. Apart from my extra chromosome, I am just like you. I go to school. I love to dance. I love to sing and play and have fun with my friends. I like spending time with my family and I love to eat chocolate cake. Yum! Sometimes people who have Down syndrome can have other health conditions or may have difficulty hearing or even use microphone signs to support them speaking. And sometimes they can take a little bit longer to learn things or may need a little more support. It just means you need to be a wee bit more patient and ask if I would like some help. Sometimes I may want help. Sometimes I really want to learn how to do it myself. Children sometimes want to play but are worried to ask me. But guess what? I love to play and have fun. Just treat me the same way you would anyone else. And we could be the bestest of friends. We could dance, sing, play, and even eat chocolate cake together.
So our hope with the education platform is that children and young people go home, they tell their parents that they learned something new, and that the stigma towards different disabilities goes away, and that people have a little bit more of an understanding of diversity, basically. So the platform is there available free for all teachers, police officers and health and social care professionals. We've got nearly 1,500 people using it throughout Scotland. The lessons on disability awareness are progressive, so nursery all the way up to primary 7. And then we have our I Am Me film, which is based on real life stories And it's very similar to Gemma's story. So Charlie has autism and a learning disability, has just become a little bit more independent, has his own flat and a new job at the garden centre, and starts to be targeted by youths within his community. And it's just about educating young people in secondary school about the language that they use sometimes and the possible consequences of that. And sometimes if the language that they use inside the playground, if they use that out within the community, then it could be seen as a hate crime or a hate incident. So everything's there. It's all lift and go for everyone. We also deliver our Keep Safe Ambassador programme to disability groups, and that's just so that people can identify incidents that are happening in the community and know how to report them safely. So when we were working with children and young people, they were very clear that they struggled to report bullying. They didn't want to report it. They didn't want to be pulled out of class. They didn't want to be called a snake or a grass. They saw incidents happening and just didn't know what to do because they didn't want the attention to turn on themselves. So we worked with 64 young people in Renfrewshire who had the idea of developing an app. So this is the Keep Safe Kids app, and it's a support and report app so kids can report bullying behaviour directly to their school. I'll just play the short video that gives you an overview of the app.
Introducing the Keep Safe Kids app. So what's this app for? Support pages on different topics all in one place. Plus a separate page for parents and carers to help them understand different topics that might be affecting their child.
The app is also there to help in another way. Have you ever seen someone having their things taken off them, being made fun of, being verbally abused, being physically hurt, or being left out and isolated?
You've seen it, or it's happened to you and you don't know what to do? Children and young people from Renfrewshire have designed this app to help. The Tell Someone button on the app allows you to report bullying behaviour directly to your school. You can do this anonymously. Reports will only be picked up during school hours.
I felt really excited but also nervous about developing the app because it's a big responsibility, because a lot of people are going to use it to come to the app to talk about all their issues and problems.
It felt really good to be part of something so important. Obviously it was a big kind of responsibility to take on, but in the end I would say it was really worthwhile.
It means a lot that we're able to do this because this is going to be an app that helps so many people, in children and adults, and to know that we get to be a part of that really means a lot.
With just a few clicks, you can easily report incidents of bullying anonymously and securely. This app aims to provide a safe and easy way for children and young people to seek help and support. The app is designed for Renfrewshire schools, but can be adapted to other local authorities' branding. Let's work together to support young people to be able to report bullying at a time they feel comfortable. Keep safe, kids. Download it now.
So the platform and the app is the way forward to educating people and giving children and young people the voice that they need, and for them to be able to report at a time that they feel safe and comfortable. I think that's me.
Thank you, Barry. I think Chloe's all the talk of eating chocolate cake together has gone to my head. So yeah, thank you so much. And I think we're obviously conscious of time, but I do want to highlight a couple of things from your presentation that I think is so important. First of all, just that how IME have done such an amazing job to involve children and young people with lived experience in the development of your resources and the importance of youth-led approaches. So I think what obviously it's all not for profit, but what the organisation has is a suite of amazing resources that are so appealing to children and young people. And just kind of picking up on what Rachel said earlier about the importance of building empathy and education, something like Chloe's video is just such a perfect way to do it. And I think what I also really appreciated is you know, just that message about early intervention, starting at the early years with these very clear messages that I Am Me have. So thank you so much for sharing that. Are there any questions in the chat box, Safia?
There are actually. So a lot of engagement regarding the app. Everyone loves it. And we've got a few questions in asking, is the app something that can only be used in schools? You know, it'd be so great if we could link into Police Scotland. They're also saying it sounds amazing and they'd love to help promote it. We've got questions about, could the app be used in Edinburgh schools and Glasgow schools? So, yep. So over to you, Barry.
The app was developed for Renfrewshire. So actually the young people voted. It came from a fund called Celebrating Renfrewshire, and the children voted to have money put towards the app. It's been developed in a way that it can be adapted. It's just up to what particular local authorities, how they fund that and how they go about controlling the app once it's developed. But yeah, we've got, if anyone's wanting any contacts from the developer, then 100% they can get in touch and we can give them some more information.
Brilliant. And we've just got one tiny question. I'm just going to sneak this in. How do parents find out if their local authority is willing to use this in terms of the app again?
I think it would just be parents and carers contacting schools or local authority education departments and just highlighting that the app is there, the framework is there, so it would just be branding in their own colours. The support pages can be localised, so you can have local Glasgow organisations on there as well as national organisations like Respect Me.
Fantastic, brilliant. Okay, well, I'm just conscious of time now. Thank you so much, Barry, for that highly engaging presentation. It was so useful and so lovely to see the film clips. And I'm now going to hand back to Lisa.
Yeah, thanks, Safia. Just a quick question, Barry. I can see in the chat that people are asking if they can contact you directly. Is that something that you'd be happy to do?
Yeah, I can put the email address in the chat box, and if anyone wants to, there's only 4 of us in the team, so we'll if you email, then one of us will get in touch, definitely.
That's amazing. Thanks, Barry. I'm really, really pleased to introduce our next presentation. So we are delighted to introduce Lucy and Gary from Enable. And I'd like to welcome them today. Enable support people who have a learning disability, including their friends, family, and anyone else who cares for them. And they help people to enjoy the health, education, human rights, and opportunities that they deserve. And they do this through their campaigns and initiatives. And we're absolutely thrilled to have Gary and Lucy from Enable with us today. Gary, first of all, has worked for Enable for 14 years, supporting Enable members to campaign for change and become more involved in their local communities through the delivery of Enable's self-advocacy forum, which is known as ACE. So welcome, Gary. And Lucy McKee has been a tireless campaigner for the rights of people with a learning disability since her time at school. Lucy is now a member ambassador for Enable Scotland and is employed to share and champion Enable's campaigns and encourage people with learning disabilities to get more active, connected and engaged in their local communities. Lucy led Enable's Be the Change anti-bullying campaign and went on to become co-chairperson of Enable's National Self-Advocacy Forum. As we said before, it's called ACE. So without further ado, over to you, Lucy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So my name is Lucy McKee and I'm 23 years old and I have been a member of Enable since 2014. I'm joined today by my colleague Gary Aarons, who is Enable's membership and participation manager. We have both been involved with Enable for a long time. I joined because I wanted to take a stand against bullying when I was at school. I will tell you a bit about that shortly. But first of all, I'd like to share with you a little bit about Enable. Enable has always been a strong campaign and charity. It was founded by a group of parents in 1954 in Glasgow, interested in making the rights of their children with learning disabilities better, and since then has grown into Scotland's largest charities, one of them. For almost 70 years, we have been empowering our members to stand up for their voices and their rights and make sure they have their voices heard all over Scotland. We believe in an equal society where everyone has the right to live, work, and participate as active and respected citizens in the communities of their choice. Enable is made up of 3 pillars. Enable Cares, which delivers high-quality, human rights-driven, self-directed health and social care for adults, young people and children. Enable Works, which serves people who are facing barriers to employment to obtain and sustain high-quality and rewarding careers. And Enable Communities, which enable people to build and grow supportive local friendships and networks where everyone is included. I first got involved with Enable when I was at school. School wasn't always easy for me. I didn't have any friends. Some of the other children bullied me and called me names. Lots of them ignored me, and I often felt invisible at school, and it wasn't a nice experience at all. So I decided it was time to make a change and make a stand, and I decided that I wanted to see some things change at my school. I spoke to my head teacher about it, and I said I wanted to talk to the whole school about learning disability and bullying. I wanted everyone at school to understand what it really was like to have a learning disability, because some of them didn't really understand. I wanted other people to know how hurtful it was when people call you names. So I got in contact with Enable, who I had seen running an anti-bullying campaign called Be the Change. And with their support, I gave a presentation to the entire school about learning disability and the impact of bullying. After this, things did get better. School was so much easier for me. I found that people knew me, they heard me speak open and share my experience, and I think that helped them to better understand what was going on and how their actions could make things better. After this experience, I immediately signed up to be a member of Enable. I started going to my local self-advocacy forum known as ACE at the time, and then became the co-chairperson of Enable's National Self-Advocacy Forum. So our Be the Change campaign did a lot of good things for young people, for other young people in the same situation as me. Phase 1 of the campaign was about raising public awareness of some hurtful but common words and things that things said about people and to people with learning disabilities. We also wanted to show some positive images and examples of young people with learning disabilities. We recruited a fantastic bunch of change champions, young people from all over Scotland, who became spokespeople for our campaign. They attended meetings in their communities, schools and other youth groups, and with the government and other policy makers to help shift this dial. They made a short video about themselves that I'd like to play for you now.
People see things I can't do, not the things I am really good at.
People don't see the great and positive things in my life.
People can't see who I really am.
Some of us have a learning disability.
But that isn't all there is to us. There's so much more.
Hi, my name's James.
My name is Connor Black.
My name is Julie Manley.
My name is Billy Surrick.
My name's Ben, I'm 17 and I'm from Above.
I work on a golf course. I work in a commercial kitchen. I own my own business. Do cleaning, go shopping for people sometimes, ironing, pressure washing and stuff.
I'm a fan of heavy metal music and also gothic music. My favourite band has to be Slipknot. They've been around since the beginning of heavy metal, I believe.
I live on my own. I really like my house and I really like my neighbours. I am really addicted to Minecraft.
I'm attending college right now to gain back some good grades on my English. That they were affected by bullying. I think college because it gives you a chance to gain back confidence and educational skills that you may have not earned in high school.
I don't told you I study catering. After college, I like to open up my own restaurant. I like to be a change champion because I used to food in high school. I don't want to happen to the other kids.
I want to be a change champion because I've experienced people not realising that people have disabilities.
I want other people to understand that other people have disabilities and abilities.
Like many people in the group, I have been bullied in the past and witnessed a lot of terrible things happen in my high school. I felt that they needed to change.
I wanted to be a change champion because I was bullied at primary school, and I want to make people aware that they're not the only one getting bullied if they are, and change things so other people don't get bullied like I did. From primary 4 to 5, I got bullied and the head teacher decided it was the best idea to just go around telling everybody leave James alone, don't talk to him. It made me feel really sad because it helped me think that everybody thought that there was something wrong with me.
So now you know about us.
So you see, we're all different.
We are fed up with bullying.
And we are going to change things.
And we need you to be the change.
First, our campaign was when our local self-advocacy groups held meetings called Get to Know Us events, where we opened the doors to anyone from the local community who wanted to learn more about learning disability. We were lucky enough to welcome over 400 people from all over Scotland to our events. They were a great opportunity for us to share more information about the effect bullying has on people with learning disabilities. We also launched a series of lesson plans in partnership with Glasgow University and Strathclyde University that teachers could use in schools to help their students better understand learning disability. The lessons focused on some important things: being open to others, people with different experiences, abilities and changes, being respectful of everyone in society, being understanding of the differences people have, being supportive of other people, and being a friend to those who need one. Our campaign really did have a massive impact on lots of people's lives. Since then, I've become a member of staff for Enable, working as a membership ambassador. It is my job to attend meetings like this, support Enable's campaigns and help to encourage other people with learning disabilities to become more empowered and able to connect to their local communities and have their voices heard. Supporting others to understand other people to understand the impact of the behaviour has on others, encouraging them to reflect and change, and I think most importantly, encouraging friendships between young people with and without learning disabilities is still the answer to reduce bullying and increase the respect people with learning disabilities have. We should all consider this when we think about how to reduce the number of people with learning disabilities and other groups of people being impacted most by bullying. Even though our campaign helped a lot of people, there's still so much to do. As part of our recent launch of Rights Now campaign to make sure people with learning disabilities in Scotland have rights upheld, we conducted a survey of over 620 people. The number one issue people raised was loneliness, isolation, and not feeling respected and valued in their communities. Over 60% of people with learning disabilities who responded told us that they felt lonely, something I and my fellow ambassadors are determined to change. Our Rights Now campaign asks for 4 things: the right to self-directed support and care, the right to inclusive education and employment, the right to be included and respected in community, and a commissioner role to be upheld, to hold public bodies to accountable to these rights. All these asks, but especially the right to be included and respected in a community, need everyone to get on board with acknowledging and changing their own behaviour towards people with learning disabilities. It needs all community groups and spaces to be open and welcoming to people with learning disabilities. It needs to be more understanding by all generations about how we can make sure people with learning disability are treated with respect where they live, work and socialise. I think this is very possible if we all come together and be the change that we can reduce the number of people with learning disabilities who are the victims of hate crimes, bullied, or just feeling lonely and isolated. Every one of us can make a difference if we reflect on our own behaviour, endeavour to make changes to how we connect to people around us in our own communities, and most importantly, if we're a little kinder and a little bit more understanding. Our campaign launched a few weeks ago, and you can find out more information and download a copy of our campaign report by visiting rightsnow.org.uk. Thank you for listening today. I'm happy to take some questions, and I urge everyone here to change and reach out to people with learning disabilities in your community and ask what you can do to make sure they feel respected and included.
Thank you so much, Lucy. That was absolutely brilliant. There's so much I want to say, and I'll pick off some of the things that most spring to mind before we move into the questions. First of all, I want to congratulate you on your amazing work and how you have harnessed your own resilience and strength to be such a shining example for other disabled children and young people. I think what's so powerful and important is when other young people can see people like themselves that aren't defined by their experience and are moving forward and being such a shining example. So I really do congratulate you, Lucy. It's absolutely amazing what you're doing. I think the other thing that stood out for me is just how powerful it was to hear you talking about what it feels like to feel invisible and ignored, and what that means to your life, basically. And I think we should all pause today on the session and think about how that makes people feel, and how we probably all can relate to those feelings of loneliness and isolation, and just what we can all do collectively, as you say, to foster good relationships between each other and to keep connected. And I think the other thing that I thought was very powerful, what Enable do so well, is linking up local communities, because everybody that's on the call today will be able to link into a local Enable branch or community of people doing great work, and that kind of grassroots collective action in the community is just so important. And I just want to finish by wishing you all the best for your campaign right now, which is absolutely fantastic campaign. So I wish you all the best for that. Thank you, Lucy, and thank you, Gary. So I'm going to ask Safia now if we have any questions. Has anything come through in the chat box for Lucy or Gary?
There hasn't, but we've had some amazing comments, Lucy, which I just want to read to you. Someone saying, excellent, Lucy, what amazing resources and a great example. And someone else saying, fantastic and powerful. Thanks so much. Work with Enable works, and great to hear about other aspects. We have a question. Are there age restrictions for being part of Enable?
Well, I can take that one. So the simple answer is no. Our self-advocacy forum, which Lucy is co-chair of, is for adults. We have just recently received funding through Motability, and we're actually starting a new youth programme. So there will be opportunities for young people to engage in Enable youth groups again, all over Scotland. That'll be happening over the next few months. But generally, being a member and getting involved in our campaigns, no, there's no age restrictions there at all.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Gary. Lisa, I'm now going to hand back to you. I'm just conscious of time, and and we are going to hand back to you and hear our next speaker.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Lucy. And as you'll see, Gary has linked the video that Lucy showed in the chat box, so you'll be able to get that after the presentation. So I am delighted now to introduce our next guest. We're going to meet Trevor Thompson, and Trevor is founder and head of production at Rebel Loop Studios, and he's going to speak to us about his documentary, his new documentary, Dyslexia and Mental Health, No More Secrets. Trevor, who is dyslexic, worked very closely with Dyslexia Scotland in the making and promotion of this documentary. And Trevor also previously produced another documentary called Dyslexia, Educate Me. So welcome, Trevor. It's a pleasure to have you along with us this evening. So I'm just going to hand over to you and ask you to introduce yourself to our audience and to say a little bit more about your film before we hand over to Claire, who's going to show a little clip.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Lisa. My name's Trevor. I'm dyslexic, severely dyslexic, so I really struggle mostly with reading and writing. I wasn't diagnosed or identified till later in life, so found school quite a struggle. Going on to further education, even harder struggle. Not knowing what was the matter with me. So after a long time, I reached out to some groups and found Dyslexia Scotland when I moved back to Scotland after being educated down south. Or going to university down south in London, and suddenly found my people. People talk about finding your people. It was people with shared experience, knowledge of what I'd went through, and what I realised as a filmmaker was I started to film people with dyslexia, and I started to see shared experience. Stuff was jumping out on the screen, what people were saying over and over again, similar situations. I just found it really interesting, and it just developed me into thinking that we didn't really have many resources in Scotland with Scottish voices about being dyslexic and neurodiverse. So it just led naturally into making a documentary. They are split into 2 sections now. It's going to be 4 sections, and it's just for funding, really. So it started off with dyslexia and the school place. Dyslexia Educate Me, and then the one we're doing now is dyslexia and mental health. The next one will be dyslexia in the workplace, and the last one will be dyslexia and the strengths. People talk about superpowers, but I find that really difficult to deal with as an adult. It's good for young people to feel it as a superpower, but it's definitely pushing into strengths, just being realistic about what we're actually dealing with. So yeah, that's my introduction, Lisa.
That's amazing. Thanks,
Yeah.
Trevor. So what Trevor and I are going to do, we're going to show Trevor's a clip of Trevor's film just now. And then I'm going to just do a little bit of a Q&A, a bit of a chat with Trevor about some of the aspects that are brought up in the film. So Claire, if you would be able to show Trevor's film for us, that would be absolutely fantastic.
In university, that I was dyslexic, so that was at the age of 30. So all my previous life I went through school, work, getting out of school, going into work, all of these different kind of things. I went through all my childhood. I went through not knowing that I was dyslexic.
There are higher rates of anxiety and depression associated with dyslexia, higher than you would get in the general population. And why is that? Why do we sort of see that pattern of dyslexia, anxiety, and depression?
Dyslexic people are more prone to mental health issues. I think that the world that they grow up in, are educated in, and work in exacerbates feelings that they have of not quite fitting in with the norm.
Teachers at my school, they would like to bring me up in front of the class and get me to read, and they'd say things like, "Someone tell the stupid girl how to say such and such." Yep, just that old problem of feeling stupid a lot of the time and feeling like you don't fit in and don't belong and having to kind of hide yourself all the time. Low self-worth. That's what I got out of school rather than useful education. I really got low self-esteem out of that situation. And I think just because it happens at a young age, it's very informing to the rest of your life. It's going to make an impact.
You learn from a very early age not to put your head above the parapet. So you stopped asking questions in class. You just got on with it yourself.
Thank you, Claire. So yeah, lots of different aspects of mental health impacts and well-being aspects brought out in that short clip, Trevor. And I wondered, when you were making the film, what did you learn from the people that you worked with when you were creating the film about their childhood experiences of dyslexia and bullying?
Yeah, I think a lot of things came out similar to people with dyslexia and neurodiverse conditions at school. They feel very isolated. Access to learning is restricted. I think there's a lot of fear. Shame is massive because you don't understand why you're not learning. I think you can be, or what I've heard from a lot of people and my experience to a certain extent is you can be bullied in very kind of subtle ways, because I think teachers don't realise that you're not learning. So they can pick on you a little bit because they think you need to try harder. They think you need you're lazy, or people think you're stupid. So I hear that a lot from people. I hear people talking about the word stupid. I even hate the word. I can't hear it. So it's a trigger word for me. So this is kind of ingrained at a really early age in education, I think, for dyslexics. Just because we struggle, a lot of us, not everybody, but a lot of us really struggle with words, reading and writing. And I think that's in our education system, that's kind of a 101. And, I wake up every day as an adult and it still takes my breath away that I can't read and write. It's like what is going on? It's hard to deal with.
Yeah. And I totally hear what you're saying about the long-term impacts of hearing those names, stupid, lazy, and how those can really stay with you right into adulthood, and those mental health impacts that go beyond the child's experience. I noticed that in the film, the coach at the beginning was talking about the importance of environment, that about how things feel, how the world that we live in, and you mentioned the word kind of shame and stigma. What do you think, Trevor, schools and youth settings should be doing so that dyslexic children and young people do feel safe, happy, respected, free from bullying? They're not experiencing those feelings of shame and anxiety and depression.
Yeah, I think there's loads of things people can do in schools. They can certainly help with, why I struggled with was being made to stand up and read. We heard from Jennifer Ewing in the documentary. This stuff's still happening. I'm really shocked listening to a lot of young people talk about their experiences with dyslexia, that stuff's really still happening in schools. What happened in my day, I'm 50 now, I was at the end of getting the belt at school, but people are still getting singled out. They're not being listened to for the basic needs of don't make me read out loud, let me have some quiet time. I think people can get disorientated a lot. People think that we're daydreaming, but it's some kind of disorientation and disconnection when we feel really, really stressed. So it's all of these kind of signaling. And the main thing, I think, what teachers and other people can do is just listen, because everybody's an individual. Listen to what helps. If someone wants to sit up the back of the class, let them sit up the back of the class. These seem like no big deals to me. Really, really easy things to implement. But I think there's still a bit of pushback, like, why should you get that? Why should you be special that way? And I think that leads into what's coming out of the documentary for me is minority groups get singled out, and for some reason in human nature, we can't help but attack them, or certain groups of people will attack them at certain points. So I think if you can have let's say the word safe room, but 6-year common room for neurodiverse kids to hang out, maybe groups where they can join with each other and support each other. Peer-to-peer support would be great. But yeah, I think it's just teachers listening to people would really help, and showing people up in front of their peers. I think that's really important for young people, that they're not embarrassed and made to stand out. The difference highlighted in a real negative way by people in control, like coaches, adults, teachers, that then signal to other younger people that they can treat people like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So that whole, just going back to what Rachel had said right at the start about the importance of us as adults, just understanding how important we are as role models. It's just so powerful. And also linking back to Rachel's point earlier about the importance of those small changes that can make such a difference, adjustments that are based on every child's unique needs. It's so important. And just what you're saying as well about the power of listening. It's such a simple thing, but it's not always easy to do. And we know that that's what children and young people consistently tell us is so important, that they feel listened to and heard. So thanks for sharing that. So let's move on to your next clip now. So Claire, if you can bring up the second part of today's film that we're going to see from Trevor's documentary, and then we'll have a chat about that clip as well.
You have intelligence there, but because of the way intelligence is measured in society with reading, writing and things like that, and as you have a problem with that, then even today you can be held back. On a daily basis, I still have a struggle with my mental health. Certain situations, I can actually feel myself going back to that 5-year-old child in primary 1. You're thick, you're stupid, you've got to try harder. I have been diagnosed with depression for about 12 years now, and I now also have an anxiety disorder. So I've seen me getting up in the morning and actually having a full-blown anxiety attack, and having to try and pull myself together just to get into my work, and it's a job I love. You know, I have great colleagues, very supportive colleagues.
We leave school, we go to college or the workplace. I've got a new glossary of terms I've got to understand. I've got new expectations of me. So my dyslexia challenges are getting bigger, they're not getting smaller, and that increases our chances of anxiety and depression. And then we get into a cycle. I'm anxious because it's going to happen, it happened, I'm going to become more anxious. And you become a belief that that's always the way it's going to be. And then you've got the history of anxiety and depression as that's who you are, that's part of who you are, and it becomes intrinsically wrapped around you like a cloak, and you get used to that. That is your being. And sometimes we have to rewrite or strike out some of our life sentences and start again and rewrite it. And I think there is always the opportunity to do so.
So thank you, Claire. I find that clip of Keith just incredibly moving, Trevor. I've watched it a few times now, and it really does underline just how those mental health impacts can carry into adulthood. I just wondered though, I mean, obviously the professional that's talking at the end is talking about rewriting our story and how that's possible. I wonder how through the people that you met in the documentary, how they did manage to rewrite their story so that those experiences growing up didn't actually define them.
Yeah, well, Keith, first off, was really, really brave being in the documentary and talking about his personal experiences like that. And we left the pause because, I think everybody who has a disability has their moments of pauses, and that silent, awkward, really tense moment in their life nearly every day. So it kind of shows that. Amanda Kirby is a neuroscientist in Wales who we interviewed. Amanda Kirby's on LinkedIn. She's really, really good. Amanda Kirby is dyslexic and autistic, and most of her family are. So she's been studying it for years. So the insights of re-scripting the brain I found really interesting. I think a lot of neurodiverse people have very open minds. So we have, I'm laughing, we go through a lot of trauma early on, but we have malleable brains that we can re-script and look at life a little bit more positively, or help us get through some of the trauma. I think it's really important to identify your trauma, understand it, and then try and deal with it. I think a lot of dyslexic people I have interviewed have buried it, and really struggle with it. So yeah.
Thanks for shining a light on just how experiences of bullying can be experienced as a traumatic event. We know that that bullying can be experienced as trauma, and taking that kind of trauma-informed approach to children and young people is so important, and to adults as well. And obviously as a nation, we're moving thankfully forwards in becoming more trauma informed and sensitive. And yeah, that message of hope, I think, is so important, because we do know that there is a risk where children and young people, not just dyslexic children, but all children, all disabled children and all children generally, where they can't identify options and a way out of a situation. They feel helpless. They feel like they don't have a voice. They feel like they can't. They're feeling those experiences of shame and stigma. So again, being able to show that there are options and that there are alternatives and that there is a recovery through that process, through that trauma, is just so important. And yeah, I absolutely salute you on your work that you've done with this documentary. I think it's absolutely amazing. So I wonder if at this point, Trevor, we could maybe open up to the chat box and see if Safia has got any questions for us. Is there anything that you want to finish up by saying, Trevor, before we do move on to questions about the film or about how people can access it?
Yeah, well, the people will be able to access the first ones online. It's all on YouTube. We're going to open source this for all educational resources. If you go to Rebel Loop Studios on YouTube, we've got our trailer as the head video. And if you type in or search for Dyslexia Educate Me, you'll see the first half an hour full length part of the first documentary. So,
and what about this new award-winning documentary, Trevor? Obviously, it's just being shown as clips at the moment. Is that right? While it's going through various film festivals, how will that be able to be accessed in the future?
In the future, it will be accessed online as well. We're going to work with Dyslexia Scotland, so they're going to use it as part of their toolkit. It'll be open sourced and put out on YouTube as well. So we will open source it for any educational people to use, really.
Right, that's brilliant. So really looking forward to seeing how this progresses for you. And I'll hand over to Safia now and see if we've got any questions for Trevor that's come through the chat box.
We haven't got any questions, but we have had some fabulous comments from our delegates, basically, who are really applauding the webinar today and the big conversations that we're having. And Mrs. Napier adding that no one should be made to feel stupid because of barriers in schools. So thank you so much, Trevor. This has been, hugely insightful and useful. Just before we leave, I am conscious of time, but we do have a brilliant question that we'd like to ask. So just briefly, Trevor, I want to ask you, why is it important to consider equity when creating positive and sustainable change for disabled children and young people?
Yeah, I think this came out in the documentary, actually, where everybody's discussing, oh God, the words came out of my mind there. It's called diversity, but what really came quick to the forefront is equity. So we're all still individuals. Equity is really important, so we can level up the playing field, so everybody can get equal access to information, to resources, to empower us, to enable us to do it ourselves. Nobody wants to rely on anybody else. You want to go full pace, at your own speed. So enabling yourself through equity is really important. It helps reduce stigma. It helps self-esteem. Equity is so important, really. It just makes things easier for the person with a disability. I think it's really easy to forget how important equity is. Or even when I was even doing the film and equity came out so much all the time, I really had to look up the definition again, really, so yeah, it's brilliant.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Trevor. And we've had a few, another comment in just saying Trevor's words were so helpful. So thank you again, Trevor. Okay, Lisa, I'm going to hand it back to you.
Great, thank you. So we're just moving now into the final section of today. Big thank you, Trevor, for joining us this evening. And we'll move forward for our closing part of today. So As we draw to a close this evening, I'd like to share some of our own team members' reflections on the topic of disability and bullying. And at Respect Me, we have we've worked tirelessly over the last few months on the Changemaker series. And so I think it's only fitting, as we draw 2023 series to an end, that we give a platform to Safia Rahman, who's been our training officer, who's worked on this project, dealing with all the partners across the three episodes, and also to our Youth Action Group member, Eva Drummond. So Eva joined our first ever action group in 2022, and since then has worked really hard to ensure that the voices of children and young people are heard when it comes to addressing bullying. So ensuring children and young people are at the heart of anti-bullying approaches and are supported to lead the way is absolutely vital, we know, to ensuring that their views and opinions are listened to and their rights are respected. So Eva is going to share with us tonight some of her own work towards achieving that, and also some of her views and reflections on this particular topic. So over to you, Eva.
Hello, I'm Eva, I'm 15 and I'm part of Respect Me's Youth Action Group, and for Anti-Bullying Week last year I drew a short animation about bullying. My motivation behind creating the film was that I wanted to create a video that shows the difficulties that young people face when being bullied in an easy way to watch. The simplicity of the characters and also the setting helps make sure that people can relate to it and interpret it in a way that benefits them. Whether this be limitations that you have because you use mobility aids such as a wheelchair, or that you struggle being in a crowded place to avoid going out because you're autistic. I wanted everyone to see a little bit of themselves in my characters, to know that you're not the only one struggling and there are ways that you can get help. I interpret the video relating to disability and bullying in many ways. As I said before, you may have a disability that affects your mobility, so use aids such as wheelchairs. This is an obvious difference from your peers and can make you feel isolated, or can make you an easy target for people to say or do cruel things. You could also have an invisible disability, such as being neurodivergent. For some people, this could make going out in public difficult and cause them to become overstimulated, or could cause others to struggle in school. This can lead to people stereotyping them as weird or different, which then affects their peers' views and also their own beliefs about themselves. I think it's really important for young people to be involved in and leading anti-bullying work, especially if you have a disability. This way, you can tell adults and people that can make decisions what you feel is important for everyone to have an equal access to what they need to feel safe and nurtured. It can be difficult for adults to make calls on what young people need in relation to bullying, as so much has changed and still is changing, such as the increase of bullying online or on social media. By having young people leading anti-bullying work in schools or other organisations means that everything that can be done is getting done, and we can feel safe and free to learn and grow. Thank you.
Fantastic, Eva. And I think we're going to have a look at your film just now. Is that right? Brilliant. Take it away, Claire. I think Eva seems to have frozen on screen. I will say we are so lucky to have our amazingly talented Youth Action Group members like Eva. She created the animation all by herself, and we've been really lucky to be able to share the very simple messages in the animation, and you'll be able to access the animation through the Respect Me digital resource pack and all the signposting. I think we've got Eva back. So before I hand over to Safia, is there anything, Eva, that you want to finish up by saying in relation to your animation or anything else that we've covered today?
I just wanted to say that we all talked, like with the youth action group, we all talked about different ways that we could create this animation. We all agreed that the fact that it was so simple made it easier for people to understand it and to be able to put themselves in the characters' places.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that goes right back to something else that Rachel said at the beginning about clarity, you know, making things simple, making easy to understand messages for children and young people and adults as well. So absolutely love the simplicity of it, and I'm sure it's going to get lots and lots of views. So congratulations on an amazing creation there, Eva, and well done to all the other youth action group members that we're so lucky to have. So I'm going to hand over now to Safia. Safia is our training officer, equalities and inclusion. As I said, she's worked tirelessly on this series, and I think it's only right that we give Safia some space to draw some conclusions and some reflections over not just this particular topic, disability and bullying, but the whole Changemaker series 2023 as a whole. So thank you, Safia.
Thank you so much, Lisa. So as our 2023 Spotlight on Inclusion and Diversity draws to a close, as Lisa explained, I wanted to remind you of the key messages from our Changemaker series, which I feel are as follows. That those who work with or care for children and young people across Scotland understand that bullying is never acceptable, that children's rights must be protected, and that inclusion and diversity are vital to promoting robust anti-bullying practice to prevent bullying behaviours. We've learned that the reason inclusion and diversity are vital is because it highlights to children and young people the importance of respect and fairness for all. It helps them understand that we all have similarities and differences, and we are each completely unique, and that is something to be proud of and really celebrated. And I think that's something that has really come across in today's really powerful presentations. Understanding what unites us helps children and young people to build empathy and compassion for each other, as well as an acceptance of others for who they are, regardless of their identity or their disability. From our work at Respect Me over the years, we've also learned that the key to being change ready is laying strong foundations for robust anti-bullying policy and practice and positive relationship approaches. We've learned that embedding these practices into our everyday lives at grassroots and a leadership level enables sustainable, non-tokenistic change and includes everyone across society, from our youth right through to our leaders, to improve awareness, culture and ethos. It has been our ambition that this year's Changemaker series has helped our audiences to build this transformational change across Scotland's children and youth settings and a more equal, just and inclusive society. This particular webinar has also highlighted the importance of equity, i.e. achieving equality based on the needs of individuals when creating change to prevent disability-related bullying. To accompany this webinar, we've created a digital resource pack full of valuable resources and signposting links from our partners today, and additional ones too that can help you on your journey to becoming changemakers when it comes to addressing disability-related bullying. So on the screen now, I've given a flavour of some of the useful resources you'll find in there. For example, Connect's Equality and Equity Toolkit, Salveson Mindroom and University of Edinburgh's Neurodiversity Leans resource that also covers the issue of equity alongside diversity and inclusion, and an anti-bullying resource from the University of Glasgow, Strathclyde and Enable, which is entitled Talking About Learning Disability. In our digital resource pack, you'll also find Respect Me 7 calls to action on disability-related bullying, which I've put on the screen now. They're also in the chat box for you to read at your leisure. Developed with our partners for the theme of this particular webinar, we'd urge all our change makers here today to read them, support them in your settings, and share them with your networks. Broadly, you'll see that our calls to action focus on education, creating inclusive environments, and working together. So that conveniently brings me to the end of our reflections today. I'd urge you all to join #TeamChangemaker and be bold, brave, and dynamic in your change making. Listen to what children and young people need, value their voices, embrace diversity and inclusion. And if change doesn't work first time, keep on trying. Our digital resource pack will give you lots of ideas in this regard. So that leaves me just to wish you good luck in your change-making journeys, and thank you for listening. It's been a pleasure to have you all this evening. I'll now hand you back to Lisa.
Thank you, Safia. I think you've left us all with lots to reflect on and think about there as we finish up tonight's presentation. I think the key messages that you taught through were absolutely spot on. It's exactly what we wanted to do. We wanted you to listen, to see the vast range of resources that exist in Scotland, people doing absolutely fantastic work, and also to make sure that you go away and use them. So what a lot for us all to go away and think about. So our speakers and panelists have spoken loudly and clearly today on the importance of us working collectively as practitioners, parents, carers and young people to channel the energy into taking practical actions to address the issues that we've talked about today around disability related bullying. There's so much rich information to reflect on, and we hope that today's speakers have helped you learn more about how to be change ready in your own unique settings. And as adults, we all have an important role to play in creating and leading the change needed to protect children from disability-related bullying and all types of bullying, to ensure that all children and young people grow up in environments where they feel safe, included, empowered, equal and respected. So let's take a moment now to reflect and tell us about which actions that you are going to go away and do and progress after today's event, so that you are change ready to address disability related bullying. So the question is, and we're going to use Slido to gather your reflections and thoughts. The question is, what is your main takeaway from today's webinar that will help you to make change to address disability related bullying? So we're looking for your main takeaway, something that really stood out, something that really resonated with you. And I'm going to hand over back to Claire now, who's going to open up Slido to gather some of these important thoughts. And I can hear some of you chomping at the bit, some thoughts coming through in the chat box, but we're going to use Slido to capture these. So thank you, Claire, for taking us through this Slido question.
Okay, so the final question is, what is your main takeaway from today's webinar that will help you to make change to address disability-related bullying? Thank you.
I saw coming through in the chat box, somebody had mentioned the importance of pupil voice. That's such an important one. Brilliant. So yeah, the lifelong impact on a person that bullying can have, diversity of how we learn, yeah, absolutely, awareness, the importance of raising awareness through all the rich resources that our presenters are giving us today. We've got lots of tools to do that awareness raising work. So sharing educational resources with colleagues. So that, again, very, very simple action that we can all go away and do is signpost, send around a link to this webinar. The digital resource pack will be coming your way over the next couple of weeks. So as soon as that hits your email inboxes, you'll be able to share that with colleagues. Curating safe spaces. solidarity and intersectionality. Yeah, really important points there. Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all of those. And I'm just going to now just finish up today's webinar with a couple of things that we'd like to draw your attention to. So just bear with me for our last couple of moments as we go through a few things that we think might be helpful and interesting for you to know about. So the first thing is that we would like you to complete our evaluation survey. Surprise, surprise. So Claire has linked that in the chat box, the actual SurveyMonkey code, but you can also scan the QR code that's on the slide just now, and you can take our evaluation survey. All of our work is funded by Scottish Government. We're fully funded to provide these webinars for free. So getting your feedback and reflections on how useful today has been is incredibly important for us. So please do take the time. And we've been talking about hashtag Team Changemaker. So please use the chat, the hashtag. Make sure you post on Twitter that you took part today. It's such a brilliant way to get noise going across the country about the resources, about the speakers, about the organisations, and about, most importantly, what you're going to go and do and how you're going to be a change maker. Safi has mentioned the digital resource pack. Do look out for that. That will be coming into your email inboxes over the next couple of weeks. And also, finally, a couple of things around about the other episodes. I could see in the chat box people were asking about how could we access the webinar 1 and webinar 2. If you go onto the Changemaker section of the Respect Me website under the Anti-Bullying Learning Academy, you'll see all of the links to the other webinars that have been recorded, like this one is going to be, and all of the digital resource pack and resources that go with it. Finally, if you want to reach out to us, our email address is on the slide, inquire@respectme.org.uk, and here are all of our social channels that you can connect with us and keep finding out about the work that we're doing. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us tonight. I hope you have a lovely evening. Looks like the sun's shining. Hopefully it will be where you are this evening across Scotland. Do take the time to fill out the evaluation. We're going to leave that open for the next 10 minutes so that you've got time to do that. And without further ado, have a lovely evening, everybody. Thank you.